Mining is one of the more involved of the peaceful gameplay loops in Star Citizen, and using the ROC mining rover is one of the most accessible entry points into that loop. Simply load up the rover on your favourite transporter and start breaking rocks. I'm Forrester, and this gameplay video shows exactly that, combining the ROC mining rover with the C1 Spirit. Some parts have been sped up to keep the overall length of the video down, and those parts are clearly marked as such, but otherwise this is the full gameplay session from start to finish. So, let's get started. And as with many a playthrough, we'll start this by summoning our carrier ship, in this case the C1 Spirit, from the terminal. This may be, interestingly, one of the last times that this happens on a gameplay video here, because the personal hangars are supposedly right on the horizon, which will save a lot of time in loading up a perfect configuration. That said, at this point in time, those personal hangars are not yet live on the Persistent Universe, so we're heading to HMS Norgard on Aberdeen to pick up the ROC mining rover. Quick landing, and head out to grab the rover. And then reverse her back on board onto the Spirit. I'm a little bit nervous about that arm sticking up. It'll be fine. It'll all be fine. So supposedly in the near future, at time of recording, be able to actually bring both of these ships into a personal hangar and load them up before leaving the station, which would be a huge win for time savings. Realise that I need to bring it further back, so pop the mining rover out, deliver the ship further back. So, you may have spotted we are on Aberdeen for this ROC mining session. Aberdeen is a very popular location for going out and searching for hand minables, owing to the extensive reserves of hadonite that can be found on the surface of the moon. But first of all, in this ×12 speed, we're just pinging away and see something that might warrant investigation. I think the downside of mining here is just the heat of the planet, or the heat of the moon I should say, means that you either need to wear a very specialist mining suit or need to be out for very short periods of time. For this gameplay session we've chosen the former. We're wearing the big red mining suit that you may be familiar with. So on investigation, that was a Prospector ROC. Should have expected that given the range it popped up at, but we have had a new contact pop up within 4 kilometers, and that is the perfect hint that those might be some ROC minables. Keep pinging away, try and find these rocks as they spawn in. And there they are. So we'll overfly them, get the Spirit landed, bring the gear down. Engines off. Always engines off when I'm landed. I don't want the ship floating off without me. Door open and ROC mining rover deploy. So, although I did spawn the ship at one of the outposts, before heading down back to the moon surface I flew out some 100-300 kilometers. So I'm not near the outpost here when I'm mining. I'm a good distance away, and if any of you watching are wondering, oh my goodness, why did Forrester not close the door of the Spirit? That's why. I'm not expecting anything nearby. There's unlikely to be anyone on foot, and I've always got my ears peeled, so I'm always listening to see if I can hear anybody joining. Bring the rock a little bit closer to this rock to get to optimal range. There we go, that'll do. And then pump up the laser intensity a little bit. So the good news is, this is the first bunch of rocks that were found on the outing, and it's Hadenite. Hadenite is more profitable than the other rock you might find here, which is Dolivine. I mean, Dolivine is fine, but the Hadenite is a little bit more profitable, so finding it is better. Just feathering the throttle there on the mining laser, keep it in the green zone, and then crack the first rock. And move on to the second rock. So you can do this one of two ways. You can either crack all of the big rocks, so you stay in your mining fracturing mode for longer and then go into the extraction mode, or you can crack and extract as you go along. I tend to prefer the former with a couple of caveats. So all of those little bits of Hadenite, they add up as you start breaking through the rocks, so you end up with a lot of little rocks, and they can have an impact on your client frame rate. So it's quite funny actually watching. I keep a frame rate indicator on the top right because it's often useful if I'm thinking about recording something to know if it's going to be anywhere near to the 60 frames per second that I would like, not that I get. But as you watch that frame rate indicator as you break up these mining rocks, you see that creeping down and down and down as all the smaller rocks spawn in. So sometimes it's necessary just to start hoovering up some of those smaller rocks just to save your frame rate a little bit from disaster. But also sometimes if the server is maybe showing a little bit laggy, that might be a hint for me to say, well, come out of fracturing mode, go into extraction mode for a little bit and see if it rescues itself. So I suppose both are latency related. Do exactly that by switching into the extraction mode and grabbing some of these smaller rocks. Always find the weather quite strange on Aberdeen because it's smouldering hot, 228 degrees here. I don't quite know how those trees ever grew, never mind how they've turned into dry trees, but never mind about that. Despite that scorching heat, it always feels very hazy, almost foggy. You don't get a clear view out. Perhaps it's something to do with the weapons testing and things like that went on. I don't know. Maybe if you know, you can let me know in the comments. So we'll break up this next rock in fracturing mode. I thought rather than speed up everything, I'd show a complete mining segment, I guess you'd say, whereby I land, break all of these rocks and hoover them up so you can get a feel for just how long that takes in the current patch, and then I'll speed up some of the rest of the footage as we progress through. And break the final Hadenite rock. Try and get an external view screenshot. And I'm not even mining the laser anymore because I'm too busy taking screenshots. Although Star Citizen is a very nice game for taking screenshots with. I think I have many hundreds of them on my disk. There we are. Back into the green zone. Breaking through. I should point out as well, as it's come up on some of the other gameplay videos that I've released, this isn't intended as a tutorial for rock mining. It should give you a flavour for what the gameplay looks like in 3.23, but it's not supposed to be this is exactly how you do it. Although I am working on a mining tutorial which will release either just before this or just after this, so you can search for that if you are looking for a tutorial. This was more just a feel of what a gameplay session looks like, taking out an hour and going out and grabbing some stuff with the rock mining rover. And then into the extraction mode and hoovering up all of this delicious hadnite. It moves into the inventory in the back of the Grey Cat rock, so you can see that on the left of the heads-up display, just gone over 8.8 of 80. You can also see it on the right-hand wheel of the mining user interface as that fills up the cargo grid slowly but surely. And the aim here is to actually just fill up the rock completely. You have got additional storage available in the transport ship that you've got, so in this case I could move some of the mined goods into the C1 and then I'd have even more space to use, but completely filling a rock I would say is usually about an hour's worth of gameplay, and for a lot of my sessions that's what I do try and aim for, so that's what we're working on today. Fill up the rock, about an hour. Try and get the last of these pesky bits of hadnite aboard. There we go. So we'll head back down to our trusty C1 Spirit. Nice little external view there for you. Incidentally, regular viewers of the channel will know I prefer to do most of my things in first person, so like the immersion of flying in first person, landing in first person, one of the few exceptions that I have to that is reversing a rover onto a ship is considerably easier in third person. So this is one of the very few instances where I do find having that third person screen, that third person view, is very helpful. Right, I think that's good enough. So we'll hop out, times 12 speed, and head out for our next mining haul. And no time at all, we found it. So land, deploy the rover, and let's see what we've scored. I can already see the green tint of some rocks, which tells me this is likely to be dolomite. So dolomite is less valuable than hadonite, but it's not terrible either, and when you've got a large group of rocks like this, I'm quite happy to sit and break these, because this is going to be a good chunk of cargo. Would I prefer that these were nice purple hadonite rocks? Yes, but these will sell pretty well all the same. Pump that laser intensity up to 100% and then feather it back down again. We're in the green zone. Actually, the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed I never got the laser intensity up to 100%, it stuck at 99%, and that's because I need to recalibrate my stick slider. I have a little slider that I use on my joystick throttle, which is fantastic for mining, but occasionally I just need to recalibrate it so that it shows the maximum and minimum values correctly. You can see an example here. We are in times 12 speed, but you can see very clearly that breaking all of the rocks first, and then I'll gather up. What you can't see quite so clearly in times 12 speed is the impact that did have on frame rate. So I lost maybe 10 frames per second by just having all these tiny little rocks on the floor. But it does look quite satisfying actually watching those being hoovered up in times 12 speed, so maybe that is worth it. Right, and then try and get back aboard the Spirit. Was parked not quite well enough, so looking for somewhere where the ramp can touch the ground. That'll do. And then back up aboard, and we'll search for the next set of rocks. So at this point it's very much kind of a rinse and repeat style, looking for these signals to appear within 4 kilometers or around 4 kilometers, and that's a hint that it's probably a mineable, and then hop out in the rock, break it up. Well, that's quite a nice view there with the spirit in the background. Mining laser deploy, and we've got another set of Dolivine. This time we got what, 6 or 7 of these rocks. So again, Dolivine not as profitable as that Hadanite, but it'll do just fine. I'm not going to complain about it when you come to sell.
Warning, power critical.
Ever so slightly just edged into the red zone, but it was ever so slight, so it's already dissipated. I'm not worried about anything exploding. Obviously that is the risk with mining gameplay, whereas something like salvage you can be much more brain off. Mining is much more involved at this fracturing stage. There is that element of danger. As you can see in times 12 speed, the Rover is slowly making its way down the hill. Not quite enough friction on this set of wheels. You can actually see all of these minables are falling down the hill as well as they get broken off, so start gathering those up. And this cargo bay is filling up nicely, broken through 55 SCUs of onboard storage now. Reverser back on, and then we'll go looking for the next set. The goal here is to try and get to 80. We can get to 80, we've filled up the rock. It'll be about an hour, that's the ideal I think for this session. Incidentally, this C1 Spirit is a lovely ship for driving the rock around with. It's very clear on the windscreen, very clear looking out the front that you can see things as they pop up. There's obviously plenty of room in the back for the rock mining rover, albeit sometimes you have to be careful of the depth of the roof, just so that you don't scrape the mining rover on it. And here we found some Hadanite.
Fracturing mode on.
But yes, C1 Spirit, one of my favourite little runabouts at the moment. It's quick to fly, decent quantum fuel stores, good utility in the back for cargo or for a mining rover or whatever it is you need. Have a lot of time for that little C1 Spirit. Feathering down the laser intensity, keeping it in the green zone. Watch to see the rock break. There we go. And then move on to breaking the next rock and up to times 12 speed. In this case, switching back to the extraction mode to grab some of these rocks just because the server seemed a little bit on the laggy side. So just take that moment to see if it catches up. Little hamster in the hamster wheel runs faster or whatever it is. And then back to braking. There's the last of those rocks. So up 76 SCU. I mean, that was almost a full rock. Almost perfectly full. So we'll head out and we'll go and sell up. So we'll head back to Norgard. Unlike the Prospector or Mole mining loops, the ore from these trips is just sold at these sort of little mining outposts in the system, albeit couldn't see the Grey Cat rock when it was on board the C1 Spirit. So we'll hop into the inventory and then we'll move the Hadanite and the Dolivine across so that they're now stored directly in the C1 Spirit. So I'll be able to sell from there. And then what I'll also do is drive out the rock. Since I'll not be doing another mining trip, having the space in the back of the C1 might be quite useful. just going to park it here, so if you find a grey cat rock here at Norgard, you are welcome to it. This is the other nice thing about the mining rover, it's got such a short timer on reclaiming it that it doesn't really matter that much if you've left one about somewhere or it's halfway across Stanton. Just reclaim it. It takes no time at all. Incidentally, the ROC is one of the few profitable ships in game that you can realistically pay back the cost of owning it within about an hour. It is so cheap to buy versus profitable to run. You know, it's by far and away not the most profitable gameplay loop. You'll see here we've got Dolivine, 60k of Dolivine, and add in the Hadnite, so it's a total of 150k. So it's definitely not the most profitable hour, but it's paid for itself, if that makes sense. So perhaps that's worth it. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, you might press the like button to let me know I should make more similar videos. And if you're not yet subscribed, given that you've got this far, you probably want to do that too, so that YouTube knows to show you more videos like this in future. But otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.